The ventilation system in this building is regularly inspected every year, but it wasn't until today during the major renovation that the entire building's pipe system, like a corpse, remained undiscovered for over 7 years. Today, I will tell you about a shocking murder case that shook China in 2006. This case not only left an impression on public opinion at the time due to the criminal's clever concealment of the crime, but also due to the continuous shifting of suspects, and to this day, the true culprit remains elusive. Hello, and welcome to the KYNX channel. It has been quite some time since the storage room in the basement of the Baffling office building in Beijing has been cleaned or repaired. That's why today, at noon, Mr. Vuong, the warehouse manager, decided to use a flashlight to clean and repair this basement floor, B2. In the warehouse, as Mr. Vuong was moving a box of flashlights, he suddenly noticed a human-shaped object. Upon closer inspection, it turned out to be a complete body, dried up, leaving only bones, likely dead for a long time. Immediately, he called the police to report the discovery. Recalling the scene, Manager Vuong said that it resembled the mummies from horror movies. It was truly frightening. Upon receiving the report, the police quickly arrived to conduct a preliminary investigation based on the information provided by the manager. They discovered that the victim had been placed deep inside a 50 cm diameter pipe, over 10 meters from the opening. The victim's red strappy dress and white bra were still intact. The police deduced that the victim was a young woman, aged between 18 to 22. Her face had suffered severe injuries, likely from a blunt object, resulting in distortion. The forensic doctor also discovered signs of rape on the victim before her death. However, due to the extended time since her demise, DNA testing couldn't be performed. The victim had her nails painted and wore relatively high-end clothing. Besides her body, a small bag from a well-known luxury brand was found. The bag contained some cosmetics, but there was no wallet or cash. Additionally, a shopping receipt dated 1999 was also found in the bag. Investigators determined that the victim died around a year prior, which means it was either before or after the building's completion in 1999. Her body was concealed in the ventilation pipe beneath the basement. The powerful ventilation fan had immediately dried the body. Various cases of disappearances before and after 1999 occurred in Beijing, with no trace of the victim. After revisiting missing persons files from that year, the police discovered a mysterious disappearance case from the same year, possibly related to the vanishing of a young woman named Q Duye. To confirm the victim's identity as Q Duye, the police reached out to the victim's parents for DNA testing. They recognized their daughter through her dress and personal items. The enigmatic missing persons case had finally located its victim. But all that remained were dry bones. Q Duye, a 19-year-old office worker, had vanished within the very building where she worked. She was the daughter of a wealthy family, often dressed in branded clothes and drove her own car. Due to her attractive and youthful appearance, she was often pursued. Working for a company located in the Baffling building, she disappeared on October 6, 1999. While having dinner with her family, she received a call from the company urging her to come to the office for assistance. That night, she didn't return home, and her mobile phone was turned off. Her parents thought she had to work overtime overnight, so they didn't suspect anything. The next morning, when they still couldn't contact her, the family became concerned. Upon inquiring, they found out that she didn't show up at the company the previous evening. Growing increasingly worried, her family immediately started searching for her. They discovered her car in the basement parking lot, B1. There was no one in the car, and there were no signs of theft. They quickly approached the building's security. The only surveillance camera at the entrance of the parking lot revealed that she had parked her car there around 9 p.m. the previous night, after which she disappeared. At this point, her parents began to panic and immediately reported her disappearance to the police. The police realized that the distance from where she parked her car to the staircase leading to the first floor was about 50 meters. Since there was no elevator in the building's parking lot, they had to use the stairs to reach the first floor. After multiple searches, the police found nothing unusual on all the floors of the building. After searching everywhere and finding no trace, the police made a surprising discovery in the basement storage room, B2. It turned out that the room had been locked because of illegal renovation. After a month, the building's owner and security personnel in charge of patrolling the basement had the key. As the family did not want to miss any possibility to find their daughter, they requested the security personnel to open the door. The security guard who opened the door was a 60-year-old man named Mr. Ngo. He empathized with the worried parents. Before the police arrived, he had already opened the door for the family to check. The police also requested a second search, but both the police and the family failed to thoroughly inspect the pipes. Around the year 2000, private cars were not as common as they are now. It was a symbol of success and wealth back then. Kwok Hugh Duye initially drove her own car. At first, the police suspected it was a kidnapping for ransom. However, the ransom demands did not materialize as expected. Due to her young age and beauty, the police further suspected a sexual assault. But after examining her case, she was neither found alive nor dead. In the end, the case remained unsolved. Even the victim was not found. In conclusion, Kwok Hugh Duye remained missing. After confirming that her body was found in the ventilation pipe in the basement B2 of the Baffling building in 2006, the police reopened the case and investigated all her colleagues who worked in the building at that time. Due to the passage of time, most of the evidence at the scene had been lost. The employees who had worked in the Baffling building at that time were now scattered across the country, making it difficult to trace clues. The difficulty of solving the case had increased by 10 times. However, this type of murder case had a strong impact. As long as there was a glimmer of hope, they had to make full efforts to solve the case and catch the culprit. The local police immediately formed a specialized team to investigate thoroughly. They began to sift through the list of suspects who were active around the crime scene during the time of the incident. The person was familiar with the area, and they had to make the most of any opportunity to catch the murderer. The basement level B2, where the body was concealed, had the corpse deep inside the ventilation pipe, hidden in a discreet corner without external lighting. There was also an iron mesh, which regular people wouldn't know could be lowered. During questioning, the police narrowed down a list of initial suspects. The first was Kwok Hugh Duye's supervisor, Trong Nok Hoa. The second was the security guard, Mr. Ngo, and the third was the contractor, Mr. Liu. These two were the only ones who had the key to basement level B2 after their boss. Finally, there was a construction worker named Cheu Duk Kwong, 20 years old. Hoa, the victim's colleague, revealed that Hoa asked her to call Duye to the company for overtime work. Afterward, he lured her down to the parking lot, waiting for her to leave the office. About 30 minutes later, when he returned, he mentioned that he couldn't find Duye. Immediately, he instructed both employees not to speak recklessly, especially not to mention that he had left the office for 30 minutes. The two young women were afraid of getting into trouble, so they concealed this information. Later, they heard that Hoa had pursued Duye, despite being married and older than her, but she rejected him. However, after cross-referencing the timeline, the police realized that the time did not match. Duye received a call at around 7 p.m. and left home after 9 p.m. The surveillance video showed her entering the parking lot around 9:40 p.m. Hoa left the office around 9:10 p.m. and returned to the office at 9:40 p.m. The time gap between the two was only a few minutes. Even if Hoa encountered Duye, he couldn't have raped and killed her within 3 to 4 minutes. Then he hit her body, dragged it to basement level B2, and placed it inside the ventilation pipe. It would have taken at least 20 to 30 minutes to complete all these actions. Furthermore, according to the two female employees, nothing unusual happened after Hoa returned to the office. He appeared normal and composed. After ruling out Hoa as a suspect, the police began checking the people with access to the basement key. The person in charge of the basement key was Mr. Ngo, the security guard of this area. However, during that time, Mr. Ngo suffered a stroke in 1998, which left him with partial paralysis and limited movement in one hand. This made it physically impossible for him to commit a crime, especially against a young victim. The focus then turned to the third suspect, the contractor, Mr. Liu. He also had a basement key and was responsible for overseeing the construction of basement level B2. Although he had the key, he did not return it. However, many witnesses testified that on that evening, Mr. Liu and the building owner played face cards without enough time to commit the crime. The most likely suspects had alibis. This once again complicated the police investigation. A crucial lead was provided by Mr. Ngo. On the night of the murder, he noticed 3 workers loitering around, smoking and showing odd expressions. He recognized one of them as Cheu Duk Kwong, a 20-year-old construction worker who helped complete the building. The owner often called the workers for construction work during the day, and they stayed overnight in nearby shanties. When Ngo asked, Kwong mentioned they were drinking and watching adult videos, so they couldn't sleep. They wanted to find a sex worker the next day. When they heard about Duye's disappearance, Ngo became suspicious of these 3 workers. However, he didn't report it to the police out of fear of retaliation. Recognizing this as crucial information, the police immediately summoned and investigated Cheu Duk Kwong. When the police apprehended Kwong, he was still working for contractor Liu. Seeing the police approach, Kwong quickly stated that the matter had nothing to do with him. His extremely unusual behavior drew the attention of the police, but they also couldn't jump to conclusions that he was the culprit. Nevertheless, they had been investigating for a while, and it's likely that the other workers were aware of this information. Based on the principle of not letting the guilty go unpunished and not falsely accusing the innocent, the police conducted a more detailed investigation of Chae-Duk Kwong. The result wasn't surprising. He confessed to participating in the rape and murder in October 1999. According to Kwong's confession, the police captured two other suspects in that case, Vuong Phuc Min and Duong Quang Hoa. According to their statements, after meeting Mr. Ngo, all three decided to leave. As they encountered Duye coming down from her car, Kwong teased her with vulgar remarks, and Duye scolded him. He turned and went toward the stairs, followed by the other two workers. They knocked her down with multiple punches, and even though she screamed for help, it was ineffective. They carried her down to basement level B2 and then raped her. After the crime, fearing the victim might report them to the police, all three decided to kill her and hide the body in the ventilation pipe. Based on the lead provided by Kwong, the police arrested Min and Hoa. After questioning, both confessed to raping and killing Duye. At this point, it seemed they had found the culprits, and the case was seemingly closed. However, things took a turn after the case was submitted to the court. Many irregularities were discovered. There was no evidence in the case apart from the confessions of the three suspects. If the confessions were essentially similar, especially regarding details only the perpetrator would know, it could prove their involvement. But the confessions of all three suspects contradicted each other, particularly in fundamental aspects. Kwong and Min described different locations for the ventilation pipe and had entirely different methods of killing. Hoa, on the other hand, did not mention where the body was hidden and did not mention using a sharp weapon. The suspects also contradicted each other on how they took Duye to the basement and the sequence of events, especially regarding how they opened the basement door on level B2. Although all three initially confessed to being the culprits, their final confessions raised significant doubts about the investigation. In 2007, Vuong Phuc Min suddenly died from a cerebral hemorrhage. Chae-Duk Kwong began displaying signs of mental illness. Duong Quang Hoa was deemed to have intellectual disabilities during the trial. Later, Kwong and Hoa retracted their confessions, claiming they were coerced into confessing. By 2008, both individuals were declared innocent due to insufficient evidence. The final case had to be reinvestigated. However, almost no evidence was found. Leads that could have been collected, such as blood, semen, fingerprints, and footprints, had all vanished after 7 years. It was thought that after 7 years of disappearance, finding the victim's body would provide new insights into the mysterious case. However, after countless investigations and suspects, the results regarding the culprit remained inconclusive. Were the two victims' colleagues right in their confessions? Were the three men who initially confessed as perpetrators truly guilty? After retracting their statements, were they hiding something behind their claims? Numerous doubts arose after each detail investigated. The police still couldn't understand why, if those three men were not the culprits, they would confess to murder solely due to police threats. Were they covering for someone else, and could that someone else be the true perpetrator? But now, over 14 years have passed since the three suspects were declared innocent, and it's been 24 years since the incident involving Kwa Kyu Duye. Her family can only hope that someday the real culprit will be caught and brought to justice. What are your thoughts? Do you believe those three men were truly guilty or not? Have you uncovered any other intriguing details? Feel free to leave a comment in the description section. Goodbye and see you in the upcoming videos. Please subscribe to the KYNX channel to receive the latest updates on real-world cases around the world.